So it turns out I'm worse at this consistency thing than I thought. With the release of Muv Luv Photon Melodies, I finally decided to dive into the Muv Luv series and ended up completely addicted to it. I mean, it's basically the only thing I've been playing recently, and because of this, I decided to dedicate the entire month of August to Muv Luv, both because I really want to talk about each of the games, and because I haven't really read any other visual novels recently, so I can't make videos on anything else. With that said, let's take a look into the first game that started it all, Muv Luv Extra. Hello and welcome to the visual novel series where apparently Friday is seen as a loose term. Look, I tried to get this out on time and I have no excuse after being gone for a month, but editing is hard, man. Anyway, let's talk about Muv Luv. Muv Luv Extra is a visual novel set in 2001, following the story of Shirogane Takeru. The game begins with a brief perspective from his childhood best friend, Sumika, introducing herself and Takeru with their childhood friend dynamic, before throwing us permanently into the perspective of Takeru. Initially, we get a slice of their daily life. Takeru and Sumika go out for lunch, enjoy their day off from school, and everything seems normal. That is, until Takeru wakes up in his bed the next morning and finds a random girl named Maya lying beside him. Sumika comes to wake Takeru up as usual, sees Maya, and with ferocious rage punches Takeru out of the galaxy before we get our official opening animation. The game follows Takeru's day-to-day life with Maya, Sumika, and other main characters Chizuru, Ayamine, and Miki. Each of these girls has their own route depending on the choices you make, with Maya and Sumika's endings being the default ones. Takeru himself is a rather lazy guy who is kind of a dick and thoughtless a lot of the time. Of course, he ends up being caring and supportive when he needs to be, but his personality overall is quite rough and he is quite the blockhead in some scenarios. Sumika is Takeru's long-devoted friend with an energetic personality, generally very upbeat and whimsical. A lot of her scenes can be quite funny, and Sumika is best girl. Maya is the other main female character ending up in Takeru's life, and being the heir to the financial company, she basically makes it immediately known she has an infinite amount of money. She is very set in her honorable and high-class ways, but comes to respect Takeru's way of life as the story progresses. Chizuru, often referred to as class rep, is a star student figure, often shown as being disciplinary and very focused on enforcing the rules. She does have her sympathies, but she hates Ayamine with a passion. On the opposite end of the spectrum, Ayamine is much like Takeru when it comes to school, lazy and apathetic. She skips school a lot and speaks in fragmented sentences and slang, not even mentioning how sarcastic she is. Every aspect of her infuriates Chizuru, and their feuds are often. Finally, Miki has a very girlish and clumsy personality, and oh my god, that hair. Her cat-like look is never really mentioned and is not particularly relevant except for you specific subset of degenerates out there. What the fuck am I trying to say? She much prefers her friends to get along and is constantly trying to balance the dynamics between Chizuru and Ayamine and Maya and Sumika in regards to their feelings for Takeru. The main common route plot involves Takeru and the gang attempting to save the school's lacrosse team by attempting to do their best at the school's sports festival, which will be the last for the main cast who will soon be graduating. Afterwards, the plot will diverge depending on who you have the most affection with. This can be seen by which girl of Sumika and Maya gets to play the Valgrind arcade game with Takeru, or who ends up finding a stray cat later on of any of the girls. However, it is important to note that unless all scenes are seen with Chizuru, Ayamine, or Miki, the game will either put you on Sumika or Maya's route, or the game will have a common end that simply ends with the final lacrosse game. Sumika and Maya's routes are the main routes that should be completed before moving on to Muv Luv Unlimited, though ideally you should do them all. The two teachers, Marimo and Yuko, take the winning lacrosse team and their manager Takeru to a spa where both hilarity and romance ensues. Both Maya and Sumika basically admit their feelings to Takeru and declare to each other that they'll be fighting for Takeru's feelings until the end. Then, of course, depending on who you were committed to the most, you'll get their respective ending. With Sumika, everything goes back to normal and the childhood friends become lovers. Meia's ending is a little more intense, whereby it is revealed that she had to let Takeru figure out on his own that Meia is actually a friend from his childhood, and at one point, he promised to marry Meia. Meia wanted to hold him to that promise, but her father wouldn't allow it unless Takeru remembered on his own volition. As that did not happen until Meia left, she is being married to some other important figure for the financial company. But with the help of some of Meia's servants, Takeru crashes the wedding, admits his feelings to Meia, and they also live happily ever after. Well, I shouldn't say also, cause I hit my fucking mic again. I shouldn't say also, cause in this reality Sumika is left sad and abandoned, but I digress. If my drunken Reddit post is anything to go by, I was certainly hoping Sumika's route was the canon route. Of course, by now I've gone through the next game and a half and partly know what happens, but I stand my ground. Sumika, best girl. And also, I know, oh he's going off script. I know that at some point, Alternative is probably going to kill Sumika and I'm gonna fucking cry. I just know it, and I can hear those that already know what happened laughing in the background. Ayamine and Chizuru's routes are focused on drama. Ayamine's route involves a man named Sagiri? What the fuck was it? Sagiri, who is a doctor and family friend, accidentally ruining Ayamine's mother's own reputation at the hospital. Despite the accident, it did not change the fact that he is in love with Ayamine and actively pursues his feelings for Ayamine. Ayamine, holy crap, I'm saying her goddamn name so many times, is simply unsure what to do. Takeru does his best to diffuse the situation and of course ends up with Ayamine. Chizuru's route has her accidentally injure her best friend in the lacrosse field, which still happens in Ayamine's route. But in this case, her school thinks it was on purpose and demonizes her until she is at her breaking point. Takeru sympathizes with her and despite some underlying family issues, manages to help her out and inevitably falls for her. Miki's route is shorter and more based on comedy. Her father and his friend are in a family feud for which they have tied 99 times in a row. They decide to use their daughters to fight their 100th battle on the archery range. However, Miki has extreme anxiety despite being a really good archer, cannot fire with anyone watching. Takeru, of course, solves this issue, but she still loses. Before the shocking reveal that everyone was in on it as a way to help Miki overcome her fear and was not the serious battle she thought it was. Something Takeru and Miki end up together. I'm guessing you could see the main issue I have with this visual novel is that it is almost too generic in a lot of ways, such as the story and character arcs. There's only so many times the bright and zany Japanese high school setting with trickled-in romance can stay interesting, and it's beginning to lose its grasp on me. That's not to say it's not enjoyable. The soundtracks are nice, the writing is funny a lot of the time, and the subtle hints dropped that end up being relevant later on is actually really cool. It is also extremely dramatic in its presentation, which is funny at first but kind of tiring after a while, although it is turned down slightly in later installments. As well, I don't mean to imply the characters aren't interesting, and in fact, Muv Luv Extra is extremely important because it builds the characters up before the second game happens. But these characters are fun to watch in their interactions, and I thoroughly enjoyed how they are portrayed. Just their extra stories are not particularly interesting. Taking the series as a whole, you could almost argue that that's the point, but we'll get there when we come to it. All I have to say on the matter is that if the first visual novel in a long series is not interesting, it's hard to keep readers continuing with the series despite it getting to be extremely interesting. Given that I know how the series progresses, I would have to recommend this visual novel, if not at least for Sumika and Meia's routes. But don't get me wrong, before getting completely sucked into Muv Luv Unlimited, which I'll be talking about next week, it took a lot of half-assed reading and loss of interest before getting through Muv Luv Extra. But is it bad? No. No, it's not. Play the damn thing already. Before I sign off, I realized I didn't talk as much about some other important characters such as Yuko and Marimo, and didn't even mention Takeru's best friend and Valgaron sparring partner, Yoroi, but those characters are a lot more relevant and interesting in the following games, so I'll go into more detail there. Also, I think there's some other common ending with Yoroi, but fuck it, I'm too far in alternative to care. Okay, I've talked enough. This is the part where I remind you to smash that subscribe button, but I ain't no plebs, so you do you, chums. I only ask that if this video caught your interest, that you stay tuned for next week and then maybe think about subscribing if you're into that. Or do it now, because I got something cool cooked up if I ever happen to get 100 subs. But anyway, I've been talking for far too long and my voice is gonna die, so goodbye.